What's up YouTube, and welcome along to another draw along with me. Today's style is this paper cutout effect. If you're new here, I post tutorials every week, so feel free to subscribe and turn on the notification bell down below so you're notified every time I post a new video, and be sure to drop a like as well so I know you like the content. As always, let's create a new canvas. So we're going to hit the plus and create a new canvas, and my dimensions will be 2500 by 2500 and my DPI set to 300. Once we've got our new canvas, we're going to want to get started and set our background color. As mentioned, there's a link in the description to the palette, so you'll be able to follow along with this selection of colors. And we want to go to our layers, and we want to go to our background color, and we want to select this option here, bottom left on the third row, and that's our main background color for this design. And then on layer 1, we want to go to our brush library. We want to scroll down and select under calligraphy the option of monoline. Then when we go to our layer 1, let's go back to our colors and let's select this color here, which is the first option on the second row. And what we want to do is we want to just draw a circle. It doesn't matter about your brush size at this point, we're just drawing a circle because this is the background of our design. And pop your finger on the screen and hold your pen at the end and you'll get a perfect circle, and you can drag it as big or as small as you need. Roughly something around about that size will be perfect, and then you want to drag and drop your colour into the centre. And let's just position that in the middle of the canvas. I have these orange lines that turn on, so let me know one is vertically in the middle of the design and likewise horizontally as well. You can turn that on by coming to your snapping options and turn on snapping. Now it's positioned in the middle of the design. Now what we want to do is draw in the foreground, which will initially be the ground as well as a cacti. And what we need to do is, for the shadows to work at the end of the design, we want to cut that out of our circle here. So if we tap on our circle and we go to mask, we'll create a mask that's completely empty for that circle. And then make sure you're tapped on the mask. You'll know which one you're tapped on because it will be the darker blue. And you want to make sure and triple check that your color is set to black, and you can double tap at the bottom of the disc and you'll get black as an option. Now if you go to your brush library and use the monoline brush that we just previously used, but drag your brush size roughly down to around about the 15% mark, and let's pinch to zoom in. We want to draw in some ground here across the floor, and what we're going to end up drawing is we're just going to end up drawing like a squiggly little line. And you don't want them to be too straight because this is the ground and the ground isn't perfectly flat. And you've drawn your line in where you want the ground to be. Now the only adjustment I will make is just add a little bit more to this side here. And what you can do is you then want to make your brush size slightly larger and just colour in and cut out the rest of this section. Now you can just go all the way around the bottom here and link up to your start point, and you should be able to drag and drop your colour in, which will fill the whole thing in black. Now, just to give some extra context here, if you've not used mask before, a mask, if we go to our layers, anything in black that we drew on this layer here will essentially be erased from the layer that we added the mask to. So black is like shadows and white is like light. So you can't see in the shadows, but you can see in the light. And essentially, if you draw on here with black, you're not erasing from the design, because I can draw here with black and it cuts a little bit out, but if I change my pen to white, I can actually then fill it straight back in the design, and the original design, whether it's a simple circle like this or a very detailed image, is always still there. You're just hiding parts of it with a mask, as the name intends. So now we've got our floor here in the bottom. We're going to go back to our mask, and I'm just going to make sure my brush is black again, just to make sure. And then we're going to draw in our cacti, as well as add in some like little rocks across the floor as well. So on the left hand side, I want to add my cacti in, and then using the monoline brush, I think I'm going to set that still to the 15% we had before. Just going to go up and create like a rounded tip like that. Now I went a little bit skinny there towards the bottom, and we can just fill that in a little bit more. And we're continuing to use the layer mask, so we should be able to drag and drop our black color in like that, and that's been erased from our circle. And then let's just make our brush size a little bit bigger make it a little bit easier on ourselves. It's up to 30% now. just draw in then the sort of branches. I'm not sure what the correct term is with a cacti, to be honest. We want to just draw in the side parts of the design of this cacti. So there's one. So what I did was that, again, because we can draw anything we want in the mask, as long as we link it all up like that, you can drag and drop your colour in and it will save you some time. So I'll demonstrate that again. I'm going to keep my brush at 30%. I'm going to draw in another. And you want to just draw it like so. And then because it's linked up both here, I can drag and drop the colour in of black, and we've cut out our cacti. And then the only other thing I want to do is let's make our brush size a little bit smaller, down to roughly 5%, and just draw in some little blades of grass. Maybe even make your brush size all the way down to 1%, and just some very light vegetation on the floor there, like so. And maybe on this right hand side we draw in like a rock or some sort of extra detail like that, and maybe another one leaning up against it. And again, drag and drop the colour in, and it will fill the entire shape. So this is our foreground. This is perfect. Now we can start to build all the layers that will go backwards in the design, and when we add our shadows in, everything will nicely layer in. And we're doing the groundwork now by cutting this out of the circle so we can add our initial shadow in. So let's go to our layers, and let's pinch to confirm what we want to do now. Pinching on the layer to apply the mask means that all the items you cut out you're happy with and you no longer want to use the mask feature, you can apply it. So if I pinch those together, you can see on my layer here that the cactus has had its shape cut out of the circle, and now it's been applied permanently. What we now want to do is create a new layer and tap on that layer and make sure it's a clipping mask. And now we want to start working on the layer in behind and then continue all the way back through. So let's go to our colors, and let's select this color here in the top left hand corner on the first row, and then continuing to use our monoline brush under calligraphy, which we will use for the majority of this design. We will then start to draw in the next layer in behind. So I'm going to just pinch in a little bit. Now we don't want to go too high because you'll make it too much distance between the foreground and the next shape of the land in behind, but something roughly around that is good. And what you'll need to do is, as we've done in previous designs, it's easy to make your brush a little bit larger for this. You just want to go to your end point where you got right to the very edge and draw all the way around. I know you can't visually see it until you meet your start point. And then what you've done is you've linked up the shape. So your start point goes all the way across, comes around this line that we just drew, and you'll be able to drag and drop your colour in like so. As I've mentioned throughout Procreate, as long as you draw a design or a shape and link up your shape from start to finish, you will be able to fill it in with the colour. And when we zoom in and have a look, we can draw our second cacti on the right hand side. So again, let's drop our brush size down to about 10%, and then continuing to work on the layer that we just drew. I'm going to draw the exact same shape that we did before, and it's up to you if you want to do something a little bit different or draw the exact same style shape. And because my start point was here and end point is here, I can drag and drop my colour in like so. And let's draw the second part of the cacti like so. And make sure your cacti is slightly smaller in its proportions, as it is further away in the distance. You don't want it to be too big, otherwise it will not give you that sense of perspective, making its way backwards. And that's our second layer done. We can then go to our layers, and what we now have to bear in mind is each layer has to sit in front of one another like so. So this is our foreground, then we get another layer in the background, and then we have to put another layer behind that, and so on and so on. So what we need to do is, this layer here we now created, we need to create a layer in behind it. So we simply just tap on the circle, which is the base layer, and create a new layer. And as you can see, it pops it underneath the one that we just drew, and now we can start to work backwards. So let's go back to our colours. Let's select the second colour on the first row and continuing to use the monoline brush, which I believe actually we don't change throughout this entire design. We're going to zoom in ever so slightly, and we're going to draw in our second little bit of landscape. So maybe this one is a bit more hilly, and we want the terrain to slowly start to change as we make our way backwards. We want it to become sort of larger pieces of landscape. And as before, we make sure we go to our end point. You can draw all the way around, keeping your pen on the screen, and meet up to your start point. And then drag and drop your colour in, like so. And that's our nice second layer in the background. Again, we could add a cacti in here. I'm not going to for this particular one. Maybe what I will do though is zoom in and add in some rocky-like textures, like so. Maybe we add 2 big boulders just there, just to give some extra context. Maybe we add some more detail, like so. Now, bear in mind with this particular style of design, sometimes adding too much detail, it will get lost with the shadows, especially if it's relatively small. So something like that's not so bad, but the more, we don't really want to add any more detail in the layers going backwards, because it will get lost with the shadows. Next, we'll do the same process. So we'll tap on the circle because we want to create a layer in behind that one that we just created. So we'll tap on the circle and hit the plus, so we have a layer underneath. Then let's go to our colors and let's select the third color on the top row. And now we're going to get into the larger pieces of landscape right in the distance. So for this, we can maybe make our line sort of approach from here rather than right over on the left hand side. And we just create our hilly texture first, such as that, and again go all the way around because we need to fill this colour in and link up to where we first started, like so. And then we want to draw in our sort of our desert-like landscape. So what we want to draw in now is these sort of awesome rocky big columns, and then so they sort of have sort of side columns, and then they will have a larger main section, and then you can end your line just in case you're super happy with it and fill it in just to be sure, and then you can go ahead and just add in the extra ones that you might want to do. So I'm going to add in another one here like so, give it a nice little jagged point there at the top, and again I'm going to just drag and drop my colour in every time I'm happy with it, and maybe create a little smaller one here like so, that then tails off like that. That's awesome. That's a lovely, nice little bit of background texture. Now the only thing I'm going to do for mine, yours will look slightly different. I'm just going to offset mine slightly more to the right hand side, so we leave a gap in the middle for our eventual sun, and all of your landscapes should start to focus inwards like so. So with that said, I just need to fill in this tiny little edge here and drag and drop my colour in. And then we're going to do the same process again for the next layer back. So tap on the original circle base layer, hit the plus. Then we're going to select the fourth colour in on the top row. And then on that layer that we used, we're going to do the opposite of this essentially and do it on the left hand side. So let's draw in where we want our landscape to come in from, maybe something like that. And again, tail upwards to a nice flat surface, come all the way around and link up to our start point, drag and drop the colour in. And now, because obviously we've got our cacti in front of it, we need to bear in mind where we position this particular piece of landscape. So I'm going to do mine slightly off to the left hand side. So let's start off with the first sort of pillar, then the main rocky part, drag and drop my colour in like so. And then maybe we essentially just add on this one just a little one off the left hand side, because if we add it in any more in behind this cactus, it's going to get lost anyway. So something like that works perfectly for me. Anything I might actually do is just change that landscape, and these are things that once you start to add in your landscape, you work out what you do and do not want to tweak, make some slight adjustments, and that's perfect. You're making it as you go and it won't be a problem further down the road. And let's go to our layers again. Let's add in what will now be the fifth layer backwards. So let's create a new one. let's go to our colors, and we are going to select the 5th color now on the top row, which will be our final piece of landscape. And we'll zoom in again. And again, as I mentioned, you want everything to start to focus inwards. Now you can either make the decision, do you want it to be on the left hand side or the right hand side? Now I'm going to start by drawing in with my horizon line, which I want to go straight across the screen. And I'm going to go all the way around and link up to my start point, like so. And now I'm going to add in my final piece of beautiful rocky texture in the background here. Maybe I make this one slightly skinnier, or do I add an extra column here and drag and drop the colors in, get an idea for what we've drawn. So maybe just add in some extra little rocky sort of hillside up towards this beautiful bit of landscape, and maybe even on the right hand side we just roll that up into the top, like so. And then what we want to do is, after this particular layer, we're going to go backwards a layer one more time. And so let's go back to our base layer and create a new one. And then with your color picker, double tap in the top left hand corner to select white, and that'll be the perfect shade of white. And then let's draw a circle, hold your pen at the end point and you'll get an ellipse, but if you pop your finger on the screen, you'll get a perfect circle. And then when you're happy with the size, drag and drop your color in of white. And we just want to position that one vertically straight down the design so it nicely sits in the center, but maybe just position it so it's just behind the horizon, such as that. So that's perfect now for our bottom half of our design. Now we want to draw in the cool clouds where they're attached onto strings for this paper style effect. Now it's up to you if you want to put the strings in. I like them, so I'm going to do so for this one, but that's your call. So the first thing we want to do is we need to draw in more of this dark color on the base layer, and we need to repeat the process that we did initially. So let's go to our base layer and tap on the option of mask. And again, we want to make sure we're drawing in black, because what we're essentially doing is cutting items out of this shape that are the very top level of this effect. So what I like to do is, let's just draw a straight line in from the left hand side and pop your finger on the screen, which will give you a perfectly horizontal line, like so. And if I zoom in for you, we're just going to draw in some wispy clouds, and they're quite thin ones. I quite like that style. And again, because my design links up on the edge of the screen, I can drag and drop black in because we're cutting out, remember, from the mask at this point. And we've got our first cloud here, like so. What you want to bear in mind is the closer clouds that we're drawing in need to be larger than the ones in the distance. So again, I'm drawing a horizontal line and popping my finger on the screen to draw a horizontal, perfectly straight line. And let's start at this point and just create that wispy high effect like that. And then drag and drop the colour in, like so. Now I'm happy with that in terms of the top layer. So what we'll do is repeat the same process. Let's go back to our layers and let's pinch in to apply the mask to this particular base layer, which means those clouds have now officially been cut out. And essentially what you're seeing is that colour there is the background colour underneath it, because we've cut that out of that piece. So now what we want to do is go to our top layer and make our way backwards again, all the way down the colours, and draw in the clouds for each layer that we want. So our top layer here is this second colour. So let's go to our colour picker and select on the top row the first colour. And on this layer we want to zoom in and we want to draw in some clouds for this particular colour. Now you can make your brush slightly smaller, mine's at 3%, but you want to make your clouds smaller, that's the priority. So let's draw in a cloud here, perfectly straight line again. Let's draw in a line here and put a finger on the screen to get a perfect straight line. And draw in that wispy sort of look to it, like so. And maybe we add one more down here. So draw a line, put your finger on the screen for a perfectly horizontal one. And zoom in. And let's start quite large and then tail off, like so. Now we have 2 clouds for that colour. Let's add in one more actually up here, like so. And then let's draw in the cloud, going for a different shape on that one. And now we've got 3 for that colour and 2 for the original one. And so let's make our way backwards. We now want to work on the orange layer, which is this second one here. So let's go down on our layers to it. Let's go to our colour picker and select the second option on the first row. And let's draw in some more clouds. Now at this point you want to start to think about where you arrange them so that they sit behind one another. So I'm going to draw a straight line off of this cloud here. Put my finger on the screen for a perfectly horizontal line. And again, just draw in that cloud, but because it's going in behind, it will work really nicely when we come to add in our shadows. This shadow from this particular piece will nicely rest on that, and it creates that level of depth to this design. And let's just draw in one more here, right in the middle. Put my finger on the screen. Again, keeping it all perfectly horizontal, just keeps a nice continuity across all of it. And then we want to just draw in that rest of that one. Like so. And let's go back a layer again. So now we're working on this one here on the right hand side. So let's go to our colours and select the third colour now. And same process, make sure you've got the layer selected. So we should be on this one here now, the third one down. And let's draw in some that come off from the side. Perfectly horizontal line as always. And make this one bouncy. Make sure you link up to your original line and drag and drop your colour in. And maybe we draw another one in up here in the top left, again coming from the outside of the design. Let's make this one a little bit smaller though this time. And again, zoom in, create that nice bouncy line, like so. And then let's progress further backwards. So now we're going to work on this layer here on the left hand side. So go to your colours and select the 4th colour. And this is the penultimate one on this, so we've only got this layer and this one to do afterwards. So make sure you've got that layer selected. As always, little tip, just turn the layer on and off to make sure you're on the right one, which we are. And let's draw in another little cloud. I'm going to make this one quite small now because we're working on the really far back layers of the design. And I'm going to draw 2 that simply just hide behind 2 other clouds, like so. Let's draw one more. Let's draw one more up here, slightly larger towards the top, that's fine. And again, bouncy line, like so. And the last layer, which is this one here in the background, turn it on and off to be sure you're on the right one. And go to your colours, it's the 5th one on the first row. And let's zoom in and draw in our final few clouds. So let's put this one behind this one here. You don't have to position any of them behind any other clouds. I quite like the look it comes with. And let's draw one at the top here, like so. Drag and drop that colour in like that. And one here, very small though. Make this one very small. And 3 little bouncy lines. And we have our clouds for this design. So now what we want to do is add in the shadows. Now we'll work from the back of the design forwards. And so what we want to do is we want to go to our little sun that's in the background here. And what we want to do is swipe this to the left hand side and you'll get the option of duplicate. And if you tap on duplicate, you'll get now another version of it. And bear in mind your layers. Layers always work from the top to the bottom. So this one here, that's the first one on top of it, we want to work on the one that's underneath. Now for this one, we want to tap on it and select the option of alpha lock. Go to your colours and double tap towards the bottom and select the colour black. Now you can simply tap on that layer now and use the option of fill, and because you made it an alpha lock layer, when you tap on fill, it will only fill in that circle. Now, because we've got the white layer in front of it, you can't see, but you can see from your layers that we did that correctly. Now tap on that to turn off the alpha lock, because now we want to blur it out. And go to your layer options by tapping on the N and just reduce it down to roughly 36%. And then let's go up to our adjustments and go to Gaussian blur and select the option of layer. And drag from left to right, you'll see this blue bar across the top above my pen. That's how much blur you are or are not applying. And we want to make sure our design is consistent with how much blur we put behind each layer. And for me, 10% looks pretty cool. So I'm going to leave it at 10% and we'll use that rule for all the layers in front of it. And then we've got our glow in, but we need to add the direction, and I like it from the bottom left hand corner to the top right. You can change the direction if you want. You could have it go like down, but that doesn't look ideal with these layers. So by doing it at a diagonal, you'll show the shadows not only on the base layers, on like the foundations of our landscape, but also on the items in the sky. So for example, if I grab my cursor and drag it and I make my direction this way from top to bottom, we don't get that nice effect. But if we do it from the bottom left hand corner up to the top right ever so slightly, so I'm dragging it diagonally, we get that nice shadow in there, and every layer will nicely be affected in that way. And we're going to go to our layers and we're going to repeat that process for all the layers above. So now turn this layer on and off. We're working on the next layer in front, which is perfect. We swipe that one to the left and repeat the same steps. We duplicate the layer. We go to the layer underneath out of the two that we duplicated. Tap on it and select the option of alpha lock. Now, because we've already got black selected, we can tap on it and select fill straight away. That's now filled that in black. We can now tap on the layer and turn off the alpha lock. And we want to lower our opacity down roughly to around about that 35% mark. And then let's go over to our adjustments. Let's go to Gaussian blur and layer. And then let's drag that from left to right till we hit that 10% mark, which you can see in the middle of the screen towards the top just here. And we've added that shadow in nicely. So then what we want to do is go to our cursor and then drag our design, and make sure you drag from outside the square up towards the top right hand side until we are creating that little bit of depth between the layers. Tap on the cursor when you're done, and that's another layer done with this effect. So then we can progress on to the other layers and repeat the exact same process. We're working on this one on the left hand side now, so if we swipe that to the left, duplicate the layer. On the bottom one out of the two, we tap on that layer and select the option of alpha lock. We've still got black selected, so we can tap on that layer and select fill. It'll fill the entire layer in black where we've actually drawn. Tap on that and turn off the alpha lock. Same process, repeat your opacity down to roughly 35%. Now you want to go to your adjustments, go to Gaussian blur and layer, and swipe from left to right until we hit the 10% mark, or roughly that mark. Then go to your cursor and, as always, drag over towards the top right hand side. So you drag in this shadow off to the right hand side ever so slightly and slightly up. And we're starting to build up the shadows now. We're building up the depth, and likewise especially on the top here with the clouds. As we move up our layers, turn the layer on and off just to be sure you're working on the right one, and we are meant to be working on this one here on the right hand side. You swipe that to the left and repeat the process again. We duplicate the layer on the second one out of the two, tap on that layer and select the option of alpha lock, tap on it again to use the option of fill layer, tap on it again to turn off alpha lock, and then if you tap on the N, lower your opacity down to 35%, and we'll go to our adjustments, go to Gaussian blur and layer, and swipe from left to right till we hit the 10% mark. And then with your cursor, drag that shadow off to the right hand side ever so slightly, like so. And as long as you keep the distance a lot of the time the same, you'll get a nice consistent style across all of them. Let's work on the second to last layer now, which is this orange layer here. Swipe that to the left. On the second one, repeat the process. Tap on the layer, select alpha lock, fill that layer with black, turn off the alpha lock, go to your opacity and drop it down to 35%. Go to your adjustments, select Gaussian blur and layer, and swipe from left to right to that 10% mark. Grab your cursor and just drag it upwards to the right hand side ever so slightly, like so. And now we're going to work on this layer here. So let's go to our very top layer, swipe that to the left hand side, go to the second variation, tap on it and select alpha lock, tap on it and select fill layer, tap on it and select alpha lock again, tap on your layer options on opacity and drag it down to 35%. And let's go to adjustments, let's go to Gaussian blur, layer, and swipe from left to right till we hit that 10% mark, which we have. Hit the cursor, just drag it up and towards the right hand side ever so slightly, like so. Now, I'm sorry if I sounded like a robot repeating myself there, but the process has to be repeated for all the layers in the exact same way, and then you get that nice consistent style. Now, for the initial layer here at the front, we have to do things slightly differently because we've cut the object out of the initial base layer. We've got to do a little bit of a different effect to try and create that shadow inwards. So we'll go to our layers, we'll scroll down and we'll get to our base layer here. I'm going to tap on that and create a new layer. And we want to tap on this layer of our base layer and select the option select. And you'll get these diagonal moving lines on the screen. What we've done is we've selected the shape of that layer. And what we want to do is we want to tap on the option of invert. Now what we've got technically selected is the outside here. Now what you want to do is go to your layers and go to that blank new layer that we created, and you want to drag and drop the black color from the top right hand corner into the space around the edge. Now visually you won't see anything different, nothing will change. You can tap on select to complete that action. If we go to our layers, you will now see that this layer here has essentially the opposite. We've essentially filled in the outside rather than the inside, and that's perfect for what we want to do now for our shadow. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat sort of the similar process that we did before. We're going to tap on the layer and we're going to drop the opacity down to 35%. And we're going to go to our adjustments and go to Gaussian blur and layer. Blur that out to 10%. And you'll start to see around the edge especially that there's a shadow starting to form just right on the very edge. Now I've done the same percentage to 10%, and then you grab your cursor and then same process, drag that layer up to the right hand side ever so slightly and you'll get the shadow that we want. Now the only thing we have to do is it's perfect and we've added it in the right place. You can see it down at the bottom left, but we just need to rearrange our layers and drag that layer all the way up so it sits at the very top. And now once you do that, you'll see we get that perfect effect that the shadow comes right around the edge here, continues up, bounces up round our cactus, and then all the way across our design. And now we've done all the shadows for all the different pieces and all the different layers. I like to add the strings in now at this point. I feel it adds that little extra touch of the handcraft look to it, but essentially you could leave this design as it is now. You've done the paper cutout effect. We're just adding in some nice extra details now at this point, so stick around just for those. So now we'll go to our layers and we'll select the plus and create a new layer, and make sure you tap on it to select clipping mask in case it isn't. And then you're going to go to your colors, and I've already pre-selected the colors for the strings as well. They're in the bottom right hand section of the palette. So we want to select the one in the very bottom right, which is, you know, the first one from the right hand side, third row. And you want to go to your brush library, make sure you're still on the monoline, but make sure you're down to 1%. And now, because of the way we've done the design, you would have done the hard work already. We're going to work on these big clouds that were part of the initial cutout of the design. And all you want to do is just draw a straight line up, and I do 2 strings for each one, unless they tail off the outside of the design like that. And we've got one more cloud here on the left hand side as well. And I'm just going to pop my finger on the screen to draw a perfectly straight line. and looking at our colours, they're the only two for this layer of colours. And let's go back to our layers and make our way backwards. So tap on this layer, you can start to get an idea of where your next 3 clouds are. So we want to create a new layer, and underneath our shadows as well, pop it there. So we've got the top layer here is the initial cloud that we drew. We've then got the shadow of it, and then we're going to have our strings for that as well. And we're going to draw in the strings for this layer here, continuing to use the same colour for the minute. And I'm drawing a straight line, holding my pen at the end, popping my finger on the screen, and you get a perfectly vertical line. Like so. And I had 3 clouds on this layer. And what you'd want to just try and avoid is your lines maybe getting too close to each other, so it doesn't look cluttered or you end up with one big blotchy line. And now we're going to go backwards. We're going to work on the orange layer. So if we turn that on and off, we can see we've got this cloud and this cloud to work on. And I can turn that on and off again. We've got the shadow layer for it. And then we want to create a new layer and then drag that layer underneath the shadow layer for that. Now I'm going to change the colour of the strings just so it gets slightly darker as they make their way backwards. So select this colour from the palette, the second one in from the right on the 3rd row. And from here, we're going to repeat the process. So again, just as a reminder, you can go to your layers and turn them on and off just to give you a reminder which 2 clouds in this instance I've got to draw the strings in for. And I'm going to draw that up to the top. And you can see I've definitely got a different contrast of colours now in the strings. I want the ones at the forefront to have the brighter strings and the ones in the background to have the slightly darker ones, which also adds to the level of depth. This is a perfect example here of what I mentioned about the strings. I've had to move my string slightly inwards, or I could have done it on the outside, but what I've tried to do is avoid essentially where this line here, that would have been perfect for me to position mine, but I've got to position it slightly off so we don't end up with a big chunky line. And now I've got my strings for that layer done. I'm going to go to my layers and work on the next one. Turn the layer on and off. So I can see I've got 2 clouds here, top left and top right. Got the shadow layer for it, and then we want to essentially create a new layer underneath that shadow like so. And we will stick with the same colour for now. So on this layer I've just created, we'll drag our strings up like so. And because these 2 both tail off to the outside of the design, we don't know where the end point was, so I just only need to add in a string here on the left hand side of this cloud and a string here on the right hand side of this cloud. And let's go to the layers and continue to work backwards. So on this layer here, I've got 3 clouds I need to work with. So we've got the layer for the actual clouds, the layer for the shadows, and I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to drag that layer underneath the shadows. And I'm going to change my colour at this point to the 3rd option from the right hand side on the bottom row, just so we get the darker strings now and everything gets its nice level of depth. So just as a reminder to myself, where's my 3 different clouds on this one? Now if your clouds are pretty small, you don't necessarily need to even draw 2 lines. You could just draw the 1 line straight up for that cloud. Now this is a perfect example. Ideally my line would be smack bang where this one here is, so I'm going to have to position it carefully off to the left so it doesn't interfere with that line there. Now you could double string them if you wanted to, one on the left and one on the right, but I'm going to single string them. And the last one is these nice yellowy orange strings, and we've got the shadow layer for it. Let's create a new layer underneath the shadows. Now let's single string this cloud straight up through this gap here, and let's single string this one up here, and last one just there. And now the only thing I would like to do is the background's looking a bit plain, and we could just add a little bit of a gradient in there just to add some extra touch of style. So let's scroll down our layers. Let's go down to the very base layer here. Let's tap on it and select Alpha Lock. So this is the very background layer. And going up to our colors, we'll only need maybe 2-3 colors for this. So let's select this color here on the top row, 5th color in. Let's go to our brush library, and this is just those extra touches that I spoke about earlier. And let's make our brush size roughly around about 30%, and just stroking from the top, make our way down a little bit, add a little bit more colour towards the top there, and it's brighter towards the bottom, which is what we want. And go back to our colours. Let's select the second colour on the top row in from the left, and just stroke the very top edge of the design like so. And now we've got a beautiful little gradient. It adds that sort of sunset effect to the design. And that's it for today's tutorial. If you managed to follow along from start to finish, please be sure to send me your design and tag me in it on Instagram. I love sharing your designs to my story and giving you the credit you deserve for your beautiful designs. If you like this video, please drop a like down below. It really helps the channel grow and it helps me know that you like the content, as well as subscribe if you would like more weekly content such as this. If you're not already following me on TikTok and Instagram, the links are in the description down below. If you have any questions or get stuck at all, please feel free to drop me a DM on Instagram. I'll be more than happy to help you out, and I'll see you in the next one.